The hidden truth of the fourth dimension that few people understand, as taught by David Yonggi Cho. I am going to tell you something that may sound almost blasphemous to some people. There are individuals who do not believe in God and yet still experience what can only be described as miracles. And now I ask you something. If miracles happen outside of the Christian faith, then what truly makes God unique? Why do we pray, fast, believe, and still see so many people trapped in the same pain, the same struggles, and the same cycles? For a very long time, this question haunted me. It nearly destroyed everything I thought I believed. What I am about to explain to you now is not comfortable, but it is freeing. Because once you understand this, your faith will never be the same again. I need to be honest with you, because this nearly broke me on the inside. There was a season in my life when I carried a silent anguish, the kind you do not share from the pulpit or even with your closest friends. I preached about the power of God, about miracles, about faith, but inside of me something did not add up. I saw people being healed, transformed, and prospering, yet not all of them were in churches. Some of them did not even believe in the God I served. That contradiction created a deep conflict in my mind. I clearly remember the case of a Korean woman who had been condemned by doctors. Incurable cancer. There was no treatment left, no clinical hope, nothing at all. She visited several churches, heard prayers, received the laying on of hands, and nothing changed. Until someone took her to a Buddhist monk. This monk led her to a cave where other Buddhists were meditating and praying. A short time later, the cancer simply vanished. Medical exams confirmed it. Doctors had no explanation. And I felt completely shaken. Perhaps you have experienced something similar, even if on a smaller scale. You pray, you strive, you try to do everything right, and then you see someone who does none of that achieving results you long for. Someone who does not follow spiritual principles, does not demonstrate faith, and does not even seem to care about God. This creates a deep discomfort. A quiet fear begins to grow, that thought nobody likes to admit. Am I believing in the wrong thing? Is my faith weak? Or worse, is God not as unique as I thought? I heard people say that miracles happen in Buddhism, in yoga, in Eastern spiritual movements, in meditation practices. People being healed from ulcers, from deafness, from inability to speak, even blind people regaining their sight. Then came the hard and provocative questions. Why should we call Jehovah the only creator if miracles occur in so many other places? How can we explain this without resorting to shallow or convenient answers? This troubled me deeply because I knew, in the deepest part of my spirit, that God is the one true God. But knowing something internally is not the same as being able to explain it when reality seems to contradict it. I saw many Christians ignoring this topic, pretending it did not exist, or simply saying that everything was the work of the devil. Deep down, that answer did not satisfy me. It did not explain anything. It did not bring peace. And when an answer does not bring peace, it does not come from the full truth. That was when I did something that changed the direction of my life. I stopped arguing with people and started arguing with God. I gathered all those questions, doubts, and inner unrest and turned them into prayer. I fasted. I sought. I became silent. Because there was something I had not yet understood, and I knew that if I did not understand it, my faith would remain shallow, fragile, and vulnerable. Maybe you are at that exact point right now. A place where you have not abandoned faith, but you can no longer pretend you do not see certain things. You are afraid to question, because you think questioning is a sign of spiritual weakness. But let me tell you something important. Ignoring a doubt does not kill it. It only allows it to grow in silence. That is what happened to me. And only when I had the courage to face that contradiction head-on did something begin to be revealed. The problem was never the existence of miracles outside the church. The problem was that I did not yet understand how the spiritual world truly works. And as long as I did not understand that, my faith would remain limited, confused, and vulnerable to circumstances. That unrest, that discomfort, that near crisis was not the end of my faith. It was the beginning of something much deeper. After that season of deep unrest, something began to form within me. It was not immediate. It was not comfortable. It was as if a missing piece slowly began to fall into place. During one of those intense moments of prayer, when I was no longer seeking quick answers but true understanding, something became overwhelmingly clear to me. And the clearer it became, the more I realized how ignored this truth is by most people, even inside churches. I began to understand that the universe is not only physical. That sounds obvious, but the way we live shows that we act as if everything depends only on what we can see, touch, and measure. Body, money, sickness, problems, circumstances. Most people spend their lives reacting to these things as if this were the deepest layer of reality. But it is not. It never was. As I meditated, God showed me something simple, almost instructional. Everything operates by dimensions. A line is the first dimension. A plane is the second. A volume is the third. And it is precisely in this third dimension that most people spend their entire lives trapped. This is where symptoms, bills, conflicts, diagnoses, emotional crises, and repeated failures exist. That is why so many people feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and powerless. They are trying to change the third dimension by fighting only within it. What transformed my understanding of faith was realizing that there is a fourth dimension. Invisible. Spiritual. Silent. Yet absolutely dominant. It does not react to the third dimension. It governs it. Just as a plane controls a line, and a volume controls a plane, the fourth dimension controls everything that happens in the physical world. And the most striking part is that every human being, consciously or not, accesses this dimension every single day. This may sound strange to you now, but think about it. How many times have you created an entire scenario in your mind before anything actually happened? How many times have you suffered in advance? How many times have you feared something that had not yet occurred, yet your body reacted as if it were real? Your heart raced, your stomach tightened, your sleep disappeared. That did not come from the third dimension. It came from within. It came from the invisible. It came from the fourth dimension operating on your body. Today, neuroscience studies show that the brain does not clearly distinguish between a real experience and one that is vividly imagined. The body responds in the same way. Hormones are released. Emotions are activated. Decisions are shaped. This only confirms something the spiritual world has always known. What is incubated inside eventually manifests outside. That was when everything began to make sense to me. That healed woman. The miracles outside the church. The transformations I could not explain. It was not a lack of spirituality. On the contrary, it was the use of the spiritual dimension, even if in a limited, distorted, or disconnected way from God. The human spirit, when trained to focus, visualize, imagine, and sustain internal images, exerts real influence over the body and circumstances. Perhaps now you are beginning to see something about your own life. How many times do you feed images of failure? How many times do you repeat internally that it will not work, that it has always been this way, that nothing ever works for you? Then you wonder why your reality does not change. It is not punishment. It is not bad luck. It is incubation. The fourth dimension is working whether you want it to or not. The problem is not having a spiritual life. Everyone does. The problem is that few people know what they are doing with it. Most allow fear, anxiety, comparison, and negativity to occupy that space. Then they are surprised when the third dimension reflects this through emotional illness, poor decisions, broken relationships, and repeating cycles. When I understood this, something shifted inside me. It was not excitement. It was responsibility. From that moment on, I realized I could no longer blame only the environment, people, or circumstances. Something was happening inside me all the time, silently shaping what would later become visible. The question stopped being why is this happening to me and became what am I allowing to grow inside me without realizing it. After I understood the power of the fourth dimension, something began to frighten me deeply. It did not bring immediate comfort, but a warning. I realized that many people were not just living their lives. Without noticing, they were training their own destruction every day, thinking it was normal. I remember watching the news and seeing a case that shocked the entire country. A young man had committed a brutal murder, something that seemed impossible to explain with logic alone. During the trial, the defense attorney said something that sounded like an excuse to many people. He claimed the young man had been deeply influenced by years of consuming violence on television. Films, programs, repeated images, aggressive scenes shown day after day. Many laughed. I could not. Because at that moment, something became frighteningly clear. That young man did not wake up one day and decide to destroy a life. That was incubated slowly and silently. He fed images, emotions, and impulses in the fourth dimension until, at some point, it overflowed into the third. The body simply obeyed what had been rehearsed internally for a long time. You may never go to such extremes, but let me ask you honestly. How many times do you feed thoughts that sabotage you? How many times do you repeat internally that you are not good enough, that you always fail, that you will never change your life? How often do you consume fear in the morning, anxiety throughout the day, and comparison before sleep? Then you wonder why you feel exhausted, frustrated, or hopeless. Science today confirms something I learned spiritually long ago. Studies show that constant exposure to negative content significantly increases stress, anxiety, and impulsive behavior. The brain creates patterns. Repeated emotions become tracks. Decisions begin to happen automatically. Yet most people think this is just tiredness, routine, or bad luck. I saw this happen with public figures as well. Extremely talented people, admired and successful in the eyes of the world, who fed unresolved inner conflicts for years. One example that always marked me was Elvis Presley. Fame, wealth, global recognition. Yet behind it all were loneliness, emotional dependence, addictions, and an overloaded mind. He had everything in the third dimension but was completely disorganized in the fourth. The result was not immediate, but it was inevitable. Here is the most dangerous point of all. No one notices the damage while it is being incubated, just as no one notices an egg being warmed until something is born. People think they are just watching, just thinking, just venting internally. But the spirit does not work with just. It works with repetition. Perhaps now you understand why certain cycles repeat in your life. Why you promise you will change but always return to the same place. It is not a lack of willpower. What governs your life is not what you promise out loud, but what you repeat silently within yourself. When I realized this, I admit I felt fear. Not a paralyzing fear, but a conscious one. I understood that no one is spiritually neutral. You are either incubating life or incubating something that will slowly steal from you. There is no emptiness. There is no pause. The fourth dimension is always working. The only question is in whose favor. This may be the most uncomfortable reflection so far, because it removes the role of passive victim and places us before a silent responsibility. What you allow to grow inside you today is inevitably shaping the form of your life tomorrow. After all this, one question would not leave me alone. If the fourth dimension truly governs the third, then the central issue was never just having spirituality, but who that spirituality is connected to. That was when the most liberating and confrontational understanding came to me. It is not enough to develop the spirit. It is not enough to imagine, visualize, or believe strongly. The decisive issue is the source to which that spirit is connected. I realized that when the human spirit connects only to itself, or worse, to disordered influences, it can produce results, but they are always limited, unstable, and often destructive in the long term. But when the human spirit connects to the Spirit of God, something changes radically. It is not just inner strength. It is alignment. It is order. It is direction. The fourth dimension stops being a place of conflict and becomes an environment of creation. You may have felt this at some point in your life. A season when you tried to think positively, tried to believe everything would work out, yet inside you remained restless, insecure, and anxious. Nothing seemed sustainable. Because it is not the intensity of faith that transforms, but the object of faith. When the spirit anchors itself in God, it finds stability. And internal stability changes external decisions. I have seen this countless times. Ordinary people, without privileges, connections, or extraordinary resources. Yet there was something different about them. They did not live reacting to circumstances. They carried a quiet inner conviction. Even when everything seemed against them, there was peace. And that peace was not passivity. It was focus. They knew what they were incubating within themselves. Today, research in well-being and psychology shows that people with a clear sense of purpose and healthy spirituality handle adversity better, make more conscious decisions, and display higher levels of emotional resilience. This is not coincidence. When the inside finds order, the outside begins to reorganize, not magically, but inevitably. Perhaps you are living the opposite right now. Inner agitation, many voices competing in your mind, many frustrated expectations. You try to change this by adjusting only the outside. A new plan, a new routine, a new promise. Nothing lasts because the center remains misaligned. The fourth dimension remains confused. When I understood this, something inside me became calm. Not because all problems disappeared, but because I finally understood where change begins. It does not begin with desperate effort to control everything. It begins with the conscious rest of aligning the spirit with God. From there, thoughts begin to change. Emotions adjust. Decisions become clearer. And little by little, the third dimension begins to reflect this new order. Now I ask you sincerely, who has your inner world been talking to every day? Fear? Scarcity? Comparison? Or God? Because what you allow to live at the center of your spirit is silently shaping the direction of your life. And when the fourth dimension finds the right alignment, the impossible stops being a distant idea and becomes only a matter of time. If there is one thing I want you to take with you after all this, it is this. Nothing in your life is shaped first on the outside. Everything begins in the invisible. Before any change happens in the body, decisions, relationships, or circumstances, it has already been rehearsed in the inner world. The fourth dimension is never inactive. It is always creating, organizing, directing. The question that truly matters is not whether this is happening, but who is governing this process within you. Perhaps now you can look at your own life with more clarity, not with guilt, but with responsibility. Aligning the spirit with God is not an abstract concept. It is a daily practice that redefines thoughts, emotions, and choices. When this alignment happens, the third dimension simply responds. It always responds. If you stay with me, in the next video we will climb one more step on this journey. One step closer to clarity, wisdom, and a life lived with intention. Nothing radical, just enough for you to become 1% better than you are right now. Thank you for walking with me this far. I will see you in the next video.